do appreciate you being here, so we appreciate you. I want to, first of all, as you might imagine, I want to start by thanking Robin. Coach P has handled this entire thing with class and grace, not surprisingly so. For those of you that have been with her over these last many years and spent time, that was right on par with who she is and what she's about, and I just want to reiterate my respect and appreciation for her really throughout the department. That was the theme, and it was really important to us that we reflected that, and we worked with her to manage that the right way. I also really want to just draw attention to our team and how they've managed through this. You know, as I met with them here at the end of last week, one of the things I told them was how impressed I was with their resiliency. It's a difficult spot to be in when you're as a young person going through a transition like that. Young people feel that pressure. They know what's on the line. They see it and live it every day, and I think sometimes we lose sight of that. And I just want to make sure we draw attention to that and thank and recognize our team. And I want to thank you all for a little patience. We felt like it was important to really see that season through and give that season its due before we sit down and kind of talk about the future. But we are excited about the future. We really believe we have a special opportunity here. We see and know from success in other programs the potential for programs to be highly successful at Mizzou, and we also know how our people support it, right? If you have a competitor, if you show real energy and passion and the capacity and ability to win, our people are going to be out there and support you and show up. Particularly in this sport right now in this country, women's basketball is, as you all know clearly, it is on the rise, right? It is getting so much more attention, deservedly so, and we think it is a platform that can continue to provide more brand exposure and benefit to our university, to our state, and particularly in this conference. And there's no question the SEC continues to be, seems like every sport you talk about these days, it's right there at the top. And to be really the only Midwest school in the SEC, I think that's a real advantage in this sport in particular. Women's basketball is highly competitive in the Midwest, and there's a lot of talent here that can be realized. You all are sitting in our arena, you see our facilities, you know that that's an investment that's been made, and it continues to be just a great home for our program, along with all the other brand growth and momentum that you've seen at Mizzou right now. So for many reasons, we feel really good about the opportunity. I want to assure you we're committed to it, right? It's important. Women's basketball is important. And we want to do what it takes to be successful. We have also seen considerable interest. I know that seems like AD Talk 101. You hear that every time somebody gets up and talks about a search, but I want to assure you there is a lot of interest in this position. People do see and realize the benefit and the opportunity here, and again, particularly in this conference. I wanted to start by one of the other common questions is, what are we looking for? Here is how I would articulate that. Of course, there'll be other attributes and things we will be looking for when you go through the process, but I want to start with a proven winner. Preferably head coach experience, particularly at this level, and preferably multiple stops. I think we're at a time and place where a varied background is very beneficial, and with a transition of sports as we're moving through it. Proven recruiter. Somebody that really has a very clear network in the recruiting space, and also has really demonstrated ability to manage recruiting in this era with transfers, etc. We want somebody with real energy, somebody to really kind of reinvigorate and reinstill energy in the program, but also is very relatable, right? I think particularly as I know Missouri and Midwest folks, we need to have somebody that can relate to not only student athletes, but staff, throughout our department, fans, and in the community. I believe it's important to hire someone, particularly at this level of competition, who really knows herself or himself and really understands the type of program that they lead. This is not a place where you can come in and sort of learn on the fly, right? We are at the top level of competition in all of our sports, and this is certainly one of those. And want a competitor, want somebody that really expects to win at the highest level, and sees the opportunity, particularly here at Mizzou, to do that. And of course, the ultimate fit question, right? Everybody always talks about it in searches. You need to find a fit. I do think that's something that you have to go through the process to determine. But somebody that really fits Missouri, mid-Missouri, Mizzou, and our culture, what we're trying to do here. I feel very prepared. I feel really good about a small group of staff that we've put together to get us prepared to this point. And I do recognize from a timeline standpoint, there's pressures, right? In any of these kind of high-profile hires, the answer to the question is how soon do you want to have someone hired? And you always say as soon as possible. Particularly considering transfer portal and all the other things that we need to manage. But we also we have coaches and candidates that are going to continue to be playing here, so we've got to be mindful of that, and we got to do and put in the time and the due diligence to make sure we hire the very best person for Mizzou. So with that, I will open it up to questions. I do want to say from the beginning, once we get through the questions here, I'm going to go dark. Our department will go dark on the process. You'll see us on the other end once someone's hired. I know you're pros. You know how this works. But so this will be sort of that last opportunity before we're introducing a coach to you and Mizzou Nation.
Laird, when you say you're committed to it, especially financially, what does that look like? Because everybody knows what it takes to, hire a coach like you're talking about. At the same time, there are financial issues that have been going on.
Yeah, it's a very fair question. First of all, we are committed. We recognize we're going to have to invest likely more than where we're at, right, to be successful. We've demonstrated a commitment level, particularly in a couple of our sports, football, men's basketball, here in recent years, and you've seen some of the results of that. So, up to the top levels of our university, they want us to win and be successful. Obviously, to your point, there's a balance there, and that's the balance that's got to be struck. We have to recognize the greater financial pressures we're under, all the changes we're going through, but I also think there's more revenue upside in this sport. I do believe that while you're not necessarily going to generate the revenue that you can in some of our other sports, it is a sport that you can really see some upside. And I think with winning, particularly as I mentioned here in mid-Missouri, we'll get a lot of people showing up and supporting the program if we can prove that we're competitive and win at a higher level. So that's something that has to be realized as we go through that process as well.
Laird, in terms of investing in the roster with rev share coming, I think the number that some other programs or schools have put out there is 5%. I think that's the number in the House settlement for women's basketball. Is that around where you want to see this roster land in terms of investment, or what's the thinking behind?
Yeah, I'm not prepared right now to comment on particulars related to revenue share. We are getting closer, and particularly as once the settlement becomes final. For us, I think it's important that we manage some more internal communications there. That really is coming into focus. It's getting really, really close. But there's still some factors and things we need to work through and make sure we're ready to manage that internally before we get there. But, like I said, we're committed to women's basketball, and we recognize that, revenue share and NIL type support is going to be a critical part of that.
Laird, you mentioned the Midwest, and how much does the candidate's familiarity with Missouri impact the decision?
I think it's a factor. I think just because it plays into that recruiting network, if nothing else, and it also indicates a fit. So it's something that you want to understand and realize. I don't think that it has to be a driving factor. I think it could be a benefit, an add-on, but we'd have to go through that and compare that to all the candidates.
How do you weigh that balance you were talking about trying to get a deal done quickly, get someone set up before the portal starts, versus waiting out candidates whose seasons might run even into the portal?
It's candidly, it's something you have to kind of feel your way through. So I've been a part of several of these searches in the past, and it depends on various individual situations, where they're at, what the candidate pool looks like. It is quite a process, and it's really something you just have to sort of manage as you go, but understanding what that end goal is, and at some point, those time pressures are going to impact what your pool looks like and when you need to make a decision. And is it worth waiting for it longer, or is it not? Those are all the kind of things you have to go through and manage as you realize the candidates and what you're working with.
Laird, I'm curious, in your experience with coaching searches, how helpful is it to have a situation like this where Robin is publicly, obviously excited about the direction of the program, excited about a new voice? How helpful is it to kind of have this kind of transition?
Yeah, I really appreciate that, for a lot of reasons, but that is one of them, and it continues to help. On top of, her just doing this the right way, it really did help position Mizzou to manage this process and, possibly get a little ahead of the game, so to speak, in terms of our preparation and our communication about it. So it no question, that kind of smooth landing, creates a smoother takeoff.
So could you just talk a little bit more about the conversations you had with the team and if they gave you kind of any input on what they're looking for?
Actually, I'm meeting with them here later today. Like I said, I wanted them to be able to focus on the current season first. And when I met with them at the end of last week, it was really just to, kind of thank them for how they're doing, how they're managing this, recognize the challenge it is, but also really encourage them to focus on the moment and work through this year. So we honored that, and now we'll spend some time with them this later today to get some of that input about what they think we should be looking for, what fits here, what kind of is special about Mizzou to them. So we'll be having those conversations.
Laird, you mentioned having a coach coming in that has experience at this level. Are you talking about NCAA experience, mid-major, high-major experience? What does that look like to you?
Well, I think the multiple levels is probably, to me, a little more of a driving factor there. I don't think you can necessarily pigeonhole yourself into specifics, whether that's a conference or specific levels. I think there are various talents that can translate, so you have to dig into that further. But I do think having somebody that's proven they can win and really knows their program is critical.
Irrespective of the timeline, can you give us a little insight to the process? I mean, is this a one-man search? I know a lot of things are now done virtually. Do you expect to meet people in person? How does this work?
So we have gathered a small group within our department. Really, Marcy is our senior women's administrator, and who's somebody who's got a lot of experience in this space. So be working side by side. Tammy's involved, others within our department, but a pretty small circle right now. We have hired Turnkey to be our search firm, and they are helping us through the process. So, and particularly given the high profile nature of this and the tight time frame and what that I just spoke to about all the pressures there, it's really important that we have somebody alongside us to help manage that, to make sure we maximize the candidate pool. Beyond that, we'll stay really aligned with leadership. So of course I've had conversations with our president, the athletics committee of our board, and understanding about kind of expectations, what to look for. We'll stay connected with them through the process. And getting input from others. So we've been talking to some former student athletes, those in the community, have a pretty good sense of what folks think and what's really going to be successful here. And then we'll go through that, connect those right people at the right time, and then on the back end we'll have the right candidate.
Look, when you're not quite ready to commit to sort of that 5% level for the revenue sharing, does that, in the search, does that maybe deter some of the higher profile candidates you're looking at? Is there a challenge there of maybe trying to
Well,
some of
to
those?
clarify, I didn't say we're not ready to commit to that 5%. I'm saying we're not ready to commit to sharing what we're doing yet fully, because we need to manage those conversations internally. We are committed to women's basketball, and I do feel good about how our approach to NIL. I think we've proven that too here at Mizzou in recent years, a point of pride, and that structure we have internally, internally and then also with Every True Tiger, is pretty unique, and it's a real advantage for us. So we have a selling point there. And we're going to fully fund rev share, right? So we're committed across the board. All that, if it's 20.5, we're gonna be committed to 20.5. So it's just how do we manage that specifically with women's basketball as a sport or other sports, and then how do we manage this transition process? So it's a little more nuanced than I think people want to fully appreciate, but we're committed and we're going to provide the resources necessary to compete.
Laird, is play style or any sort of particular, system in place are you looking for from that perspective, or is it just a definition of the program?
No, I think you have to go through the process to see. I do think having a coach that really understands what works for them and has seen that translate to winning is important. But I think different styles and different approaches can work. We do have to understand and look at those approaches in the context of the SEC and how athletic and competitive it is, and will that work and translate here? But I think there's all kinds of styles from all kinds of coaches who've seen successful in this sport and every other one.
I remember you were asked about the women's basketball job literally on your first day here. Very unusual situation, right? Going in with a contract that was expiring. Can you kind of take us through the process of why nothing was done last year in either direction and just what these last 10 months have been like?
You know, I would leave that to the people that were here before me. I don't want to go back and try to regurgitate what I've been told third hand because I wasn't here to live it and see it through. You know, I would tell you that it was certainly, you know, obvious where things were at when I first got here. Like you said, I was asked about it on my very first day. So having that awareness and really just trying to be, you know, really transparent and open with Robin and with our staff and everybody involved throughout the process, I think was healthy. You know, it gave us a chance to, in some ways, to land the plane like we have and to have this kind of exit. So having that awareness and working through it was something we had to be thoughtful about. But, you know, beyond that, I wouldn't really want to comment about, you know, prior time before I was here.
Laird, this is going to be your first hire as AD for head coach of Missouri, at least higher profile, I guess you could say. So do you feel any extra pressure to kind of get this first one right?
I don't know if you feel extra pressure. There's always pressure. And once you get to a certain point, there's a diminishing return on pressure. You constantly feel in this kind of role at this kind of level. So it's more of the pressure of you want to do right by the young people in the program, the fans of the program, the people that are around it, and that never changes really, whatever level you're at. And to me, that's more of a driving factor than maybe necessarily the public attention or, you know, the high profile nature of it. This is going to impact lives and experiences, hopefully for many years, and hopefully in a real positive way. So I want to make sure we get it right.
For you personally, with the multiple coaching hires made at Memphis, has there been anything you've learned as a leader for coaching hires specifically? What works, what doesn't?
You know, I would say the thing that comes to mind there is just being really engaged in the process. You know, as an athletic director, having somebody like Marcy alongside you that really knows how this works, and you know, having Tammy who's been here and has that perspective. You know, you have to have some key folks around you. Keeping it a pretty small circle in this environment is important. But then, you know, in my role, just making sure that I'm really engaged every step of the way. And, you know, I think that translates to candidates. It also really helps you assess, you know, the pool all the way along. And if you're having a lot of conversations with your people about those candidates and really thinking them through at a very detailed level, it usually translates to success.
Who handles roster retention? Because we know the portal opens in 2 weeks. I mean, and these kids all now have that chance if they want.
Yeah, so we have, you know, some support staff that are still around, right? That can help with some of that. You know, Tammy is on the front line quite a bit there too, and having some of those conversations and being around the program. I think that's one of the reasons when you really see how important is to have a sport administrator who's very engaged in the program and around it when you go through something like this, because they need to have relationships and be able to manage those things. And that, you know, we'll do our best to continue to keep them updated throughout the process. And obviously that's a challenge too in this environment that we're in. But, you know, I think that'll be a key part as well.
Laird, you talked about seeing the team this season and talking with them. What would you like the next head coach to expand on from this season going into next?
I do think it's a very well-run program, right? We do really well academically, very well respected in the community, very connected in the community. There's, you know, part of that is, you know, Robin and her leadership and the type of person she is. But I think those things are really important, particularly when you're in a, you know, small college town in the Midwest. I think that's extra important. So we want to continue to carry that kind of, you know, just goodness around the program forward. And then, you know, we need to compete and win at a higher level.
When you talk about competing and winning, what does that look like, especially if you move 3-5 years down the line?
You know, I'd never want us to shy away from expecting to win championships. I mean, we got to get to a point where, you know, in all of our sports, we're going to play for championships. Now, that is a process, right? And it doesn't just happen overnight, and it is in a highly competitive environment. So, I talk to our coaches all the time about trajectory and knowing where their programs are at and continuing to see positive movement and growth to where we get to a point where we're competing for championships year in and year out. That has to be the continued focus.
Got time for one more? Laird?
All right. Thank you all. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.